Have you ever experienced a quiet moment that felt harmless, yet left your heart slightly colder? Have you ever sensed a subtle dryness inside, not dramatic, not sinful, just a faint spiritual numbness you couldn't explain? And have you ever wondered if some of the calmest, most ordinary moments of your day might actually hide a spiritual danger you rarely notice? Saint Thérèse of Lisieux understood something profound. Not all dangers arrive with noise. Some come wrapped in silence, in moments so ordinary that the soul lowers its guard. These moments feel peaceful, but inside them hides a subtle drift, a slow cooling, a loss of alertness that gently distances the heart from God. Hook. The greatest spiritual dangers are often born in the quietest moments, the ones where the heart forgets to love. Saint Thérèse of Lisieux. Subscribe if you want to keep walking the little way and recognize the silent movements that shape your soul. Thérèse believed that the spiritual life is not threatened mainly by dramatic temptations, but by the unnoticed interior shifts that happen in ordinary hours. A wandering thought, a moment of boredom, a quiet self-centeredness, a small refusal to love, a hidden impatience. Nothing loud, nothing shocking, only quiet. She wrote, "The smallest distractions, the smallest failures of love, these are the ones that weaken me." But she did not write this out of anxiety. She wrote it out of awareness, a gentle vigilance born from love. Imagine this simple scene. Thérèse is folding laundry in the convent. The room is warm, sunlight drifting across the wooden table. The task is simple, almost soothing, but her thoughts begin to wander. A small irritation rises. A memory distracts her. Love becomes absent, not through rebellion, but through forgetting. And in that forgetting, danger hides. Because spiritual danger for Thérèse was not defined by sin, but by drifting. Drifting happens in silence. It happens in routine. It happens when the heart grows unmindful, unwatchful, unloving. These quiet moments hide danger because the soul is not actively resisting God. It is simply not noticing Him. Thérèse believed this lack of attention of the heart was more harmful than moments of visible weakness, because it happens without awakening the soul to fight. Think of your own life. How many times during the day do you move on autopilot? How many moments feel spiritually neutral, but slowly hollow you out inside? How often do you feel nothing special, but later recognize that your heart has grown colder? This is where the danger hides, in the quiet fade, not in the violent fall. Thérèse teaches that holiness does not require grand actions. It requires attention, awareness, a small flame constantly guarded. She believed that every ordinary moment is an opportunity to either remember love or forget it. In this journey of 9 blocks, we will explore how these quiet moments form, how they affect the soul, how they distort spiritual sensitivity, and how Thérèse teaches us to transform them into opportunities for love instead of danger. For now, pause and ask gently, which quiet moments in my day make me forget to love? Before we explore the deeper dangers hidden in quiet moments, we must understand why the heart is most vulnerable in stillness. Saint Thérèse of Lisieux teaches that the soul does not usually collapse under great storms. It drifts in gentle breezes. It is not the loud temptation that wounds first, but the subtle interior forgetfulness that slips unnoticed into the rhythm of an ordinary day. Quiet moments feel safe, they feel harmless, they feel neutral. And yet for Thérèse, these moments required the greatest vigilance, not anxious vigilance, but loving awareness. She wrote, "When I cease to love, even for a moment, I feel myself grow distant from Jesus." This is the heart of her warning. Distance begins in moments where love is simply absent, not rejected. Imagine a calm afternoon, the convent silent, the cloister bathed in soft light. Thérèse walks the hallway with a basket of folded linens. Everything is peaceful. No temptation, no conflict, no distraction loud enough to cause alarm. It is in this stillness that her heart unconsciously relaxes, not into grace, but into forgetfulness. Forgetfulness of God, forgetfulness of love, forgetfulness of intention. The moment seems innocent, but the soul begins to drift. This is why quiet moments hide danger. The heart stops paying attention, not out of rebellion, not out of pride, but out of spiritual sleep. Self-sufficiency slips in, complacency grows, sensitivity to grace dulls. Thérèse believed this dulling was one of the most subtle spiritual dangers because the soul remains externally good, yet internally unfocused, unloving, unawake. Think of your own life. The moment you start scrolling without purpose, the moment you enter a room and your heart feels blank, the moment you sit in silence but forget to bring your heart into that silence, the moment routine becomes mechanical, the moment tiredness becomes an excuse to stop loving. None of these moments feel dangerous. But afterward, you can feel something inside has cooled, a spiritual numbness, a quiet heaviness, a lack of inner fire. Thérèse called this losing the thread of love, not because you sinned but because you stopped noticing. Quiet moments are dangerous because they are where the heart becomes unintentional. In loud moments, moments of stress, conflict, or temptation, you become aware. You pray, you fight, you cling to God. But in quiet moments, you relax your grip, you drift, you forget. Thérèse warns us not to fear these moments, but to recognize them, to see that they are crossroads, opportunities to either drift or deepen love. She believed that the greatest saints did not avoid quiet moments, they transformed them. They turned the simplest seconds into living offerings. They filled silence with love, not with emptiness. That is the invitation, not to panic but to awaken. In the next block we will explore how these quiet moments become dangerous, not by what happens in them, but by what happens after them, the slow accumulation of small forgettings that distance the soul from God. To understand the quiet spiritual dangers that Saint Thérèse of Lisieux warns about, we must look not at the moment itself, but at what comes after. A single quiet moment of forgetfulness may feel insignificant, but when these moments accumulate, one after another, day after day, they create a subtle interior shift that the soul barely notices until it feels far from God. Thérèse believed that the most serious spiritual problems rarely begin with one large fall. They begin with a series of small, unfelt declines, a quiet moment of neglect, a quiet moment of spiritual boredom, a quiet moment of indifference, a quiet moment of tiredness where love is forgotten, a quiet moment of drifting prayer, a quiet moment where the heart stops reaching. None of these seem dangerous alone, but together they form an interior fog. She wrote, "It is the small negligences that cool my love, little by little." This is the warning. The cooling happens slowly. Imagine a candle flickering in a still room. The flame is steady, bright, alive. But imagine someone placing thin layers of glass over it, one at a time. Each layer is nearly invisible. Each feels trivial. But layer after layer, the flame grows dim. Eventually, it becomes only a glow, not because it was extinguished, but because it was covered. Quiet moments are those layers of glass. Thérèse understood that the greatest danger is not the loss of faith, but the loss of warmth. A soul can still believe, still pray, still serve, but with less tenderness, less intention, less love. This gradual cooling affects everything. Your prayer becomes routine instead of relationship. Your sacrifices lose their sweetness. Your heart becomes less sensitive to grace. Your patience shortens. Your judgments sharpen. Your compassion weakens. Your inner joy fades. And the most dangerous part? You rarely notice when the cooling begins, because it is quiet. Picture Thérèse kneeling in the chapel. The candles burn softly. The convent is silent. She begins to pray, but her mind slips into daydreams. Not dramatic sins, just small distractions. She tries again. The prayer still feels mechanical. She feels nothing, just dryness. This is precisely the moment she warns about. Not because dryness is bad, Thérèse endured it often, but because dryness without awareness becomes distance. But dryness with awareness becomes an offering. Quiet moments only become dangerous when you stop noticing them. Thérèse did not fear her distractions or weaknesses. She feared the unconscious drift, the slow forming of a heart that stops choosing love. This is why she practiced tiny awakenings throughout the day, a look toward heaven, a small smile offered to God, a silent "Jesus, I love you," a gentle act of kindness, a patient breath. These small awakenings kept the thread of love alive, because if quiet moments hide danger, they can also hide saints. In the next block, we will explore the root cause behind the quiet drift, the internal posture that makes the heart vulnerable to cooling, spiritual indifference disguised as routine. To understand why quiet moments hide spiritual danger, Saint Thérèse of Lisieux invites us to look beneath the surface, into the internal posture of the soul. She reveals that the greatest threat in these moments is not distraction, not dryness, not routine itself, but something far deeper, spiritual indifference disguised as normal life. This is not the loud indifference of rebellion. It is the soft, polite, almost invisible indifference that grows when the heart starts treating love as optional. Thérèse wrote, "I fear only one thing, becoming indifferent in the smallest things." This is a profound insight. It means the soul is not endangered by difficulty, by fatigue, or even by failure. It is endangered when it stops caring in the moments that seem insignificant. Indifference slips in quietly. It feels like nothing. It feels like routine. It feels like normal life. But spiritually, it is a cooling of the heart's flame. Imagine the daily movements of your life: washing a dish, walking to your car, checking your phone, sitting in silence, answering a message. None of these moments feel dangerous, they are ordinary. But Thérèse teaches that the danger lies not in the action itself, but in the lack of intention that creeps into the heart. When intention fades, love fades. When love fades, sensitivity to God fades. And when sensitivity fades, spiritual danger grows. Picture Thérèse in the convent kitchen. Steam rises from a pot. The clink of wooden spoons echoes against stone walls. She is performing simple, repetitive tasks. These are not moments of crisis. These are the moments where indifference is most likely to grow, because the soul becomes lulled into spiritual sleep. This is how the quiet drift begins. You stop noticing God in the ordinary. You stop offering your small acts with love. You stop whispering little prayers throughout the day. You stop expecting grace in the simple things. You stop looking for Jesus in silence. And you stop guarding your heart in the moments you think don't matter. Thérèse warns that these unnoticed moments are the ones the enemy uses most effectively, not by tempting you into sin, but by tempting you into spiritual numbness. Indifference does not sound like rebellion. It sounds like, "I'm too tired. It doesn't matter right now. It's just a small thing. I'll pray later. This moment isn't important." But every quiet moment matters, because every moment is a chance to love or forget. Thérèse teaches that the secret to holiness is not fighting enormous battles, but remaining awake in the smallest ones. She believed that a soul becomes a saint not through extraordinary deeds, but through refusing to let indifference settle into the spaces of daily life. When you lose awareness, you lose tenderness. When you lose tenderness, you lose love. And when love fades, distance begins. This is why quiet moments hide spiritual danger, because they invite indifference, and indifference is the slow death of spiritual sensitivity. In the next block, we will explore the second hidden danger of quiet moments, how they often open the door to interior negativity, discouragement, comparisons, self-judgment, and subtle pride. Quiet moments rarely remain empty. When the heart relaxes its intention and indifference begins to settle, another danger quietly slips in behind it: interior negativity. Saint Thérèse of Lisieux warns that the soul is never neutral. When love is not active, interior shadows begin to grow. These shadows are subtle. They do not enter with force. They do not appear dramatic. They do not feel sinful. But they quietly distort the way the soul sees itself, God, and others. Thérèse wrote, "A thought, a glance, a small discouragement. These are enough to wound the heart when it is not guarded by love." She understood that negativity flourishes in the very moments where we feel nothing is happening. Quiet moments without love quickly become quiet moments of discouragement, comparison, judgment, irritation, self-criticism, hidden pride. None of these appear loudly. They whisper. Imagine Thérèse sitting at her small wooden desk, copying a passage or folding laundry. Her hands work quietly, but her thoughts suddenly drift. I am not progressing. I am not holy enough. Others do this better than I do. These little tasks don't matter. Perhaps God is disappointed with me. These thoughts are quiet, but dangerous. Discouragement is especially dangerous because it masquerades as humility. It feels like honesty. It feels like self-awareness, but it is actually love turned inward, love deprived of confidence. Comparison is equally dangerous. It slips in with one subtle glance. She prays better than I do. He is more patient. She has more gifts. I fall too easily. Quiet comparisons erode joy. They drain spiritual strength. They shift the heart from gratitude into dissatisfaction. Then comes the third danger, judgment. Not judgment of others, judgment of yourself. Quiet self-judgment, often disguised as being realistic, becomes, I should have done better. I failed again. I am not enough. Thérèse recognized these thoughts as temptations, not dramatic ones, but subtle violations of trust. She insisted that Jesus is not honored by discouragement or self-harshness. She wrote, I cannot be afraid of my weakness. Jesus loves it when I depend on him. This is why negativity is such a danger. It replaces trust with self-reproach. It replaces simplicity with overthinking. It replaces confidence with fear. It replaces love with heaviness. Quiet negativity also leads to irritation, the small hidden irritations that feel reasonable, but slowly sour the heart. A sister walks too loudly. Someone moves too slowly. Someone forgets something. These irritations seem small, but Thérèse warns that irritation is simply love that has forgotten to breathe. And beneath all of this lies hidden pride, the belief that you should be stronger, more disciplined, more composed. This pride does not feel like arrogance. It feels like self-pressure. But it quietly turns the soul inward, making it rely on itself rather than on God's tenderness. This is why quiet moments are dangerous. They become fertile soil for interior negativity when the heart is not anchored in love. But Thérèse does not leave us here. She teaches how to transform these quiet shadows into quiet victories, not by fighting them forcefully, but by responding with humility and spiritual childhood. In the next block, we will explore the specific response Thérèse developed for these dangers. Small awakenings, gentle movements of love, and tiny interior acts that reawaken the soul instantly. Saint Thérèse of Lisieux never feared quiet spiritual dangers because she discovered a gentle, powerful way to disarm them the moment they appeared. Her method was not harsh, not dramatic, not filled with self-correction or emotional force. Instead, she used what she called little awakenings of love, small interior movements, tiny choices, subtle acts that instantly broke the power of indifference, negativity, and quiet drift. These awakenings are the heart of the little way. Thérèse wrote, "A small act of love repairs what 1,000 distractions have wounded. This means the soul is never far from God, even when it feels distant. One tiny movement is enough to awaken the heart again." Let us explore how she practiced these awakenings. Imagine Thérèse walking through the cloister corridor. She feels a slight dryness in her soul, nothing dramatic, just a small dullness. Instead of letting the moment drift, she lifts her eyes and whispers gently, "Jesus, I offer this moment to you." Just like that, love returns. The drift is interrupted. She is awake again. These awakenings are simple and accessible, a tiny glance toward heaven. This was one of her favorites, a second-long look, a turning of the heart. No words needed. A glance of love, and God is invited back into the moment. A quiet act of kindness, holding a door, smiling, moving gently, choosing patience. In these small gestures, the heart begins to vibrate with love again. Thérèse believed that small acts done with love defeat great dangers, a soft interior offering. While performing an ordinary task, sweeping, folding, walking, she would whisper, "For you, Jesus." This transforms the ordinary into holy ground, a breath of surrender. When a negative thought arose, she would breathe, I am little, Jesus, carry me. This single breath uproots pride and restores trust. A moment of gratitude. She might notice a ray of light through a window or feel a warm cup in her hands and whisper, "Thank you." Gratitude dissolves indifference instantly. A quiet prayer for someone. When irritation or judgment appeared, she would transform it immediately. Jesus, bless her. Irritation evaporates when turned into intercession. These little awakenings do not fight negativity with force. They dissolve it with love. Thérèse understood that the soul cannot remain attentive all day, but it can return quickly. She believed that holiness is not uninterrupted focus, but frequent return. God is not looking for constant perfection. He is looking for a heart that returns to Him each time it forgets. Imagine yourself during your day. Silence in the car, a pause in line, a slow moment at work, a quiet walk. These moments often become empty or negative, but they can also become sacred if you imitate Thérèse's awakenings. A brief whisper, a small, "Jesus, I love you," a gentle act done with love, a tiny offering, a look toward heaven. The moment you awaken yourself with love, danger dissolves, the heart warms, grace returns, distance disappears, and the little way becomes not an ideal, but a rhythm. In the next block, we will explore how these awakenings reshape your entire day, turning a life full of quiet dangers into a life full of quiet holiness. When Saint Thérèse of Lisieux speaks about little awakenings of love, she is not teaching isolated practices. She is describing a way of living, a rhythm that transforms every hour of the day. Once the heart learns to awaken itself in quiet moments, those same moments no longer hide spiritual danger. Instead, they become the very places where holiness is born. Thérèse believed that most people misunderstand holiness because they imagine it as something dramatic, heroic, or rare. But for her, holiness was simply a chain of awakened moments, one act of love following another, especially in the simplest parts of the day. She wrote, "I wish to make of every moment a little act of love." This is not poetry, it is a method. Each awakening becomes a spark. Each spark becomes warmth. Each warmth becomes a flame, and the flame fills the day. Let's see how Thérèse imagined this transformation unfolding. The morning becomes an offering. Instead of starting the day overwhelmed or distracted, Thérèse encourages a small awakening. "Jesus, I give you this day." Just that. No long prayer, no pressure. A simple offering that reorients the heart before the first danger can appear. Routine becomes relationship. Making your bed, pouring coffee, preparing for work, walking quietly. These tasks feel spiritually neutral, but they become sacred when you whisper, "For you." The soul begins to notice God again in the places where it usually forgets Him. Work becomes a field of love. Thérèse believed that the workplace, or in her case, the convent tasks, is where most quiet dangers appear, because routine dulls the heart. But work also becomes the place where little awakenings shine the most. A patient breath, a gentle tone, a smile no one sees, a small act done well. This keeps the heart warm. Silence becomes tenderness. Quiet moments used to hide danger. Now they become invitations. When you sit alone, pause intentionally. "Jesus, I'm here." That single sentence shifts the soul from forgetfulness into presence. Temptations become opportunities. When negativity, irritation, or self-doubt appears, the heart no longer stiffens or spirals. It awakens instead. "Jesus, I choose love again." This turns the enemy's subtle tactics into unexpected victories. Fatigue becomes surrender. At the end of the day, when your heart feels heavy or unfocused, Thérèse teaches not to force holiness. Instead, whisper, "I am little. Carry me." This final awakening closes the day the way a child falls asleep, in the Father's arms. When these awakenings become a rhythm, something profound happens. Your entire day becomes woven with grace, not through dramatic prayer sessions or heroic acts, but through dozens of small moments where you return to love. The soul becomes more attentive, more tender, more peaceful, more stable, more sensitive to grace, more protected from quiet danger. And this transformation is not felt all at once. It grows like dawn, slowly filling the horizon. In the next block, we will explore how these awakened moments not only protect the soul but heal it, restoring the warmth, trust, and intimacy that self-reliance, indifference, and negativity once weakened. As the soul begins practicing these little awakenings of love, something deeper starts to happen, something Saint Thérèse of Lisieux considered one of the greatest fruits of the little way. The heart begins to heal, not instantly, not dramatically, but gently, quietly, in the same way it once drifted into danger. The same moments that once cooled the heart now warm it again. The same silences that once hid indifference now hide intimacy. The same routines that once dulled the spirit now revive tenderness. Thérèse understood that the spiritual dangers found in quiet moments do not merely threaten holiness, they wound the heart. They produce interior fatigue, emotional heaviness, discouragement, and subtle doubt. But she also knew that God heals the heart in exactly the same place where the wound formed, in the ordinary, quiet places of daily life. She wrote, "Jesus heals me in the smallest moments, for I am too little for anything greater. This is not self-deprecation, it is clarity. Let us explore how this healing unfolds. First, the heart regains sensitivity. Quiet moments that once felt flat or numb begin to feel alive. A breath becomes prayer. A glance becomes connection. A simple act becomes communion. The heart that was once sleepy becomes attentive, alert to grace, receptive to tenderness. Healing begins with awareness. Second, trust is restored. Quiet spiritual dangers often weaken trust, replacing it with fear or self-reliance. But as the heart practices tiny awakenings, Jesus, help me. Jesus, I love you. Jesus, I offer this. Trust slowly reawakens. You begin to feel held again. You begin to rest again. You begin to expect love again. Healing continues through surrender. Third, the heart becomes gentler with itself. Negativity, comparison, and self-reproach lose their power. The soul no longer speaks harshly to itself. It no longer demands perfection. It embraces spiritual childhood, a state where weakness is not a failure, but a doorway to God's tenderness. Healing deepens through self-compassion. Fourth, relationships soften. Once the heart heals internally, it naturally becomes softer externally. Irritations diminish. Patience increases. Small misunderstandings no longer disturb you so deeply. The soul becomes easier to live with, both for itself and for others. Healing becomes visible through love. Fifth, joy returns. Not the loud joy of excitement, but the quiet, steady joy that comes from belonging, from knowing you are loved, from experiencing God in the small, from feeling peace in your weakness. Thérèse believed this joy was a sign of true healing. My joy is to be little, for then everything becomes grace. This is the transformation. Quiet moments once filled with danger become quiet moments filled with grace. Silence once filled with numbness becomes silence filled with presence. Routine once filled with indifference becomes routine filled with offering. The heart becomes whole not through great efforts, but through small fidelities repeated gently. But there is one more step, the final transformation Thérèse describes. A heart so awakened, so healed, so attentive, that even its quietest moments become places of deep union with God. In the final block, we will explore this culmination, the state where the soul no longer fears quiet moments, because they have become the very ground where God dwells. When the heart has learned to awaken in love, when its quiet dangers have been transformed into quiet encounters, the soul enters what Saint Thérèse of Lisieux described as a state of continual gentle union with God. Not mystical ecstasy, not dramatic visions, but an intimacy woven into ordinary life so naturally that even the smallest moments become sacred. This is the final movement of the little way, the transformation of every silence, every pause, every breath, every mundane task, into a place where God dwells. Thérèse wrote, "I find him everywhere, in everything, for my heart is awake with love." This is not poetry, it is spiritual truth. When the heart awakens repeatedly in the small things, it becomes trained to see God everywhere. Let us explore the qualities of this final transformation. 1. Quiet moments become places of presence. What once felt empty now feels full. The heart senses God in the softness of a room, in the pause between tasks, in the warmth of a cup, in the breath that slows your thoughts. The soul no longer fears silence, it leans into it, because silence is no longer absence. Silence becomes communion. 2. Love becomes habitual, not emotional love, but chosen love. You begin to move with a natural tenderness, responding gently, offering small sacrifices, praying without effort, forgiving without delay. The heart that once drifted now lives anchored in love. This is not discipline, it is habit, a holy habit. 3. The soul becomes light. Self-reliance has loosened. Negativity has thinned. Hidden fears have faded. The soul feels held, supported, carried. Thérèse loved this image. The soul in God's arms, not climbing, not straining, but resting. A light soul is a free soul. 4. Sacrifices become sweet. The difficult people, the small irritations, the daily inconveniences, instead of being burdens, they become invitations, opportunities for small acts of love. What once annoyed the soul now softens it. Thérèse believed that every small sacrifice offered with love becomes a spark of holiness. 5. God becomes close, not because he moved, but because your heart awakened enough to notice him. You begin to understand what Thérèse meant when she wrote, "Jesus is never far, it is my heart that sleeps." But now the heart is awake, tender, aware, receptive. The quiet moments that once hid danger now hide God. 6. Peace becomes the soul's atmosphere. Not peace from the world, but peace from belonging. Peace because you are living in constant, gentle relationship with God. Peace because you no longer fear weakness. Peace because love has become your rhythm. This is the heaven on earth Thérèse experienced, not dramatic but profound. The little way leads the soul into a life where the extraordinary hides inside the ordinary, where the sacred hides inside the simple, and where God hides inside the quiet, waiting only to be noticed. This is the triumph over quiet spiritual danger, not escaping silence, but transforming it, not fearing routine, but sanctifying it, not avoiding small moments, but filling them with love. When you live this way, the heart no longer drifts. It rests, it remains, it abides. Saint Thérèse of Lisieux invites you to this final truth. Holiness is simply the art of never letting a quiet moment pass without love. And when you live like this, God's presence becomes the gentle background of your entire life, steady, tender, and always near.